Welcome to episode number 290 of Destination Linux, a video podcast show from the TuxDigital Network. If you're new to the show, Destination Linux is a discussion podcast perfect for all experience levels. Whether you're brand new to open source or a guru of sudo, this is the podcast for you. My name is Jill.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Ryan.
And on this week's awesome episode of Destination Linux, we're going to be talking about hardware gadgets you may have never heard about, but will have you screaming, "Take my money." Then we'll be discussing the great Debian debate of 2022. Plus, we have our tips, tricks, and software picks. All this and more coming up right now on Destination Linux to keep those penguins marching.
This week in our community feedback, we have an email from Brian. And if you want to send in your own feedback, you can go to tuxdigital.com/contact to get in touch, or join the TuxDigital forum by going to tuxdigital.com and clicking on that forum link at the top of the page. Brian goes on to say, "Hi, I am a Silver Surfer here in the UK. I've discovered your podcast a few weeks ago and love them. And I'm now catching up on previous episodes. The one distro you don't mention a lot is the one I've used for the last 5 years or so, which is Linux Mint. I use it for everyday use. I never look back to the dark ages of Windows. I've used Linux full time for about 15 years now, but the more I use, the more there is to learn. Keep making the great shows. Let's keep those penguins marching," to steal Jill's catchphrase. So interesting email because, number one, when I saw Silver Surfer and first read this, instantly my geek instincts kicked in, and I'm thinking the comic book Silver Surfer.
Yeah, I had no idea what it meant either.
I was like, so is he saying he is the actual Silver Surfer from the comic books or whatnot?
Does he have the cosmic powers?
Yeah, and that got me excited because if the Silver Surfer is writing us, how awesome is that the Silver Surfer thinks about Linux and all of that? But then I went online and found out that that is not what the Silver Surfer thing means exactly. But when it comes to Linux Mint, it's one of those situations where we actually covered it a couple episodes ago. I don't remember the exact episode,
Linux
but they
Mint
were doing
21
some
came
really innovative things, and that's when we cover it. And that's really for all distros. Like if they're not doing any, if they just have a new release coming out, we might not necessarily cover it if there's nothing spectacularly new in there. Because there's not a lot of commentary to add to that. You know, if it's just, hey, we upgraded some packages and we have a new kernel version, especially when something's on Ubuntu base, it tends to not be always as exciting at first. But for instance, Linux Mint's last release had some really exciting things that they had did, and that's why we covered it there. So don't look at it as we don't like Linux Mint or not big fans, but just that if they're not doing anything super exciting, it's hard to do a whole kind of collaboration with three people talking about something when it's like, oh, there's a new kernel version or something like that. Yeah, so when they do exciting stuff, we cover it.
Let me clarify something a little bit more. So Ryan's talking about they have to do something spectacular. I think that's a little bit overstating because I want to just make it clear. The reason why it matters is because we have so many different things to talk about and so many different projects that we can cover. We have to be able to fit it in the show, and it makes sense to be in the show. So that's why there's a little bit of a kind of a barrier to entry and that sort of thing. So we do cover it when there are things to talk about, like, for example, Linux Mint 21 came out recently, and they release those big jumps every 2 years. So it might seem like we're not covering it, but we are covering it when there are things to discuss. You know, that's always true for every project. So it's not like we're giving you a barrier. You have to get something spectacular. Otherwise, it's not going to be on the show.
If you want my attention, you better be doing something spectacular. I want fireworks. I want some whole major overhaul change. No, I'm kidding. Yes. I just mean something that's newsworthy that you can actually discuss. Like if you're switching some packages out, you're doing something different that's going to make it so that, it's actually a discussion point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they made a lot of great changes in this latest release. And my other co-coordinators, Sharon and Betty of the Linux Chicks of Los Angeles, also use Linux Mint as their primary Linux OS.
Nice.
It's loved by the Linux Chicks community. And, I've used it for years on a USB flash drive to bring new users to Linux, especially those coming from Windows, because it has the look and feel
Absolutely.
of Windows.
That's really interesting because there's a lot of people, and there was also people in the chat talking about Mint was their first installation to Linux. There's also people that are saying that that's their daily driver. And a lot of people are using Mint because it is a good distro. And you might go back in the vault or archive of Destination Linux, and you might see me be a little bit negative related to Mint. And it's not because I didn't appreciate what Mint was doing or anything like that. There were certain things that Mint had an issue with in terms of the upgradability and stuff like that. There were significant issues that I addressed back in the day, and we covered Mint a couple weeks ago because I was super excited to talk about them fixing those things with Linux Mint 21. So there you go. In those situations, that's when we bring up those topics. And if you would like for us to talk about your project, of course, but in order to get Ryan's approval, it has to be spectacular. But or
you have to give me a compliment.
Aww.
One or the other.
One of the two.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But send us an email by going to tuxdigital.com/contact, and you can let us know about what you're doing with your project, and we can maybe talk about it on the future show.
And Jill, you looked up the Silver Surfer thing. Was
did.
I wrong that it wasn't a comic book thing?
I mean, the most important Silver Surfer is absolutely the comic book version. I agree with that.
Well, what was so funny is when we were talking about it during the week, during our meeting, I actually knew what it meant. But that's because I am one. I am over 50. So it was a common term used for 50 years old and up. And yeah, according to Wikipedia, Silver Surfers is the term widely used in the UK, Australia, and some other English-speaking countries to describe people who are aged over 50 and who use the internet on a frequent basis.
There you go.
Yeah. And yeah, it isn't as common used term here in the US, so I understand why you guys didn't know what it was.
Us youngins just don't get it. Well, Brian, thank you so much for sending in your email. And if you want to be like Brian, a Silver Surfer, hit us up at tuxdigital.com/contact and send us your feedback.
And if you want to embrace the entire options you have with the Power Cosmic, then go check out DigitalOcean. Because this episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by DigitalOcean. Get started right now by going to do.co/tux2022. And with the Power Cosmic, you get all sorts of great benefits. For example, you have a comprehensive portfolio of compute, storage, database, and networking products that put your cloud infrastructure in capable hands so you and your teams can get back to doing what matters most, building world-changing apps that grow your business. And with DigitalOcean's Power Cosmic, you get predictable pricing, robust product docs, and services that developers love, like the one-click install in the marketplace, be able to just load up a droplet. That is what the Power Cosmic gives you right there. And you also can get DigitalOcean regardless of what team size you have. So if you have a team of one person or a team of 1,000 people, you can get growing at DigitalOcean with their simple, powerful cloud computing. And as a listener of the Destination Linux podcast, video podcast, and a member of the Tux Digital community, you can get started for free. In fact, it's better than free because DigitalOcean is going to give you 2 months of $100 free credit when you go to do.co/tux2022. That's do.co/tux2022. So go right now, get started with your $100 free credit by going to do.co/tux2022 to get the benefits of the awesome cloud platform and the Power Cosmic from DigitalOcean. And thanks again to sponsoring Destination Linux.
So we've talked on this show in the past about open source software for desktops and laptops and those things. But what about the other cool technology gadgets that are out there? Now, next week, you're going to want to tune in because we're going to have an interview to talk about some of that other stuff, the laptops, the desktops, that stuff. So you want to stay tuned because we got a special interview for that. But this week, we're going to cover some unique gadgets that perhaps are not as well known in the mainstream, but deserve to, and it's going to have everybody here, well, maybe, clicking that smash button, buy button, take my money. You're going to be screaming at your screen. At least one of these is going to get you saying that here.
I love how I've said like the smash button so much that it made you say smash button right there.
Yes. I can't help it. It's like, it's now ingrained in me. I think you have everybody doing it too, because I hear like Gardner Bryant saying it in his videos now.
Yeah, I saw one of his videos.
You've created a storm with that smash the like button thing. Smash the buy button. We'll have you smashing the buy button. All right, so we're going to talk about things like PineCube, the Pinecil. Penicillin. We're going to talk about penicillin.
It's the Pinecil.
How it's helped so many people out there. MyCroft the mini Pupper, and the Onion Omega. We're going to have all kinds of cool things in there. But we got to start, when you think about cool gadgets in Linux and open source, I feel like you have to start with Pine64. Because who has brought us more unique gadgets than them?
Of course, because we have to talk about the Pinecil.
Penicillin.
You know, we're so close with the Pine64 folks that they may troll me and change the name just because I made that mess up there.
Or they'll put a note at the bottom as a quote. It's just you saying Pinecil, and then it has the quote for you and link it to the video.
They would do that. They would do that to us for sure. So the first one I want to bring up, though, is the PineCube. This is a small, low-powered, and open-source IP camera. So whether you're a parent looking for a free and open-source baby cam, which I remember that was a disaster looking for one because a lot of the wireless ones, there's fear of people being able to get into them and all that type of stuff. And there's all kinds of interference issues with baby cameras.
There's also like privacy related issues because I know there's certain cameras that were found to be sending the data back to their home base, and like everybody who worked at the company had access to all that footage, and like that's definitely terrifying to have something that you're using it to kind of keep your baby safe, and that data being sent to who knows where.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a privacy-oriented device. So if you're a shopkeeper, homeowner, again, the baby cam idea, I think the PineCube would be a really cool and fun thing to play with out there. It's definitely, when I saw it, like I've looked at all Pine64's amazing stuff, like their watches, their tablets, all of that. But I didn't realize they had all these other gadgets that they were selling as well, because I've just been so infatuated with kind of the stuff that's gone more mainstream there. But they create a lot of cool little things there.
Oh, yeah.
If you've not hunted around the Pine64 store, definitely do so. Definitely do so. And then we got the Penicillin, or the Pinecil.
Yeah. Oh,
And-
this is so loved by the Linux community. I know a lot of people who love their Pinecils.
Oh, Pinecil.
Pinecil.
Yeah.
Pinecil. Okay.
You see, you didn't spell it out phonetically for me. You guys know better than to not spell something out phonetically for me. The Pinecil is a RISC-V powered open
Woohoo.
and versatile soldering
this?
iron.
I fixed it in the notes.
Thank you so much.
I
Pinecil.
just put a dash in the word.
Yes.
So if you want to get yourself a pine kill, this is an amazing.
Oh man, that's just sure. I didn't specify that's an S sound. My bad.
Yeah, thank you. You got to fix that. But this is very cool. Number one, this is one of my favorite hobbies. Soldering stuff is so relaxing to me. I buy the little kits off of Amazon to make robots or radios or other things. And just being able to build something with your hands when we spend so much time in software and meetings and other things is a lot of fun. And it's also extraordinarily useful for repairing electronics all around the house, whether you're talking toaster ovens, washing machines, computers, all of those things. There are times where you could use soldering. So this is a RISC-V powered soldering iron that is brought to you by the folks at Pine64, and it's half the price of the competition, and it uses the very popular TS100 tips, which means if you already have those tips, you can utilize them with this, which makes it really nice.
And it's also a much cheaper price than usual soldering irons and stuff like that. But I think you said the name of the company wrong. It's Pina64.
Pina64, yes. Thank you.
Oh, the Pinecil, I've actually been wanting one. I need to order one soon because I think it would be so cool to use the Pinecil, a new device that I could use to build Heath kits from the 1950s.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. You'd have both technology, older and newer.
Yeah, and also Ryan mentioned earlier, kind of skirting across it, but there's actually a lot of other products that we're not really talking about in depth because there's just so many of them, right? But they have their own system on a chip, boards that you can get, like the Quartz 64. You can also get the Pine Phone, the Pinebook Pro, the Pine Tab, the Pine Time, which is their watch. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff at Pine64, and most of it is very reasonably priced. I think all of it really is, but I can't guarantee that since I haven't looked at every single product. But the fact that you can get like most of this, like I think the Pine Time watch is only like $30 or something like that. Like it's pretty awesome.
You could actually own almost the whole Pine ecosystem for under $600, which is
That's
amazing.
insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lots of cool gadgets there. But when we're talking about gadgets for your home, virtual home assistants have taken the world by storm, unfortunately, to my peril, because the gadgets that are taking the world by storm are Amazon Echo and Google Homes and all of these things that are extraordinarily privacy invasive devices. And there are so many stories out there about these things listening all the time, recording it, even people going back with their Amazon Echoes and other things and realizing that it's recording things when they're not even asking it to, just randomly throughout the day. These things are something that you definitely want the more open source and Linux philosophy against, of privacy and a platform that you can actually go through the code and make sure that you're trusting it's doing what it says it's doing. And so when you're looking for a good home assistant, I think the options that we have, whether you make one yourself with the Raspberry Pi or you buy their pre-built kit, is with the MyCroft. And so we're going to talk about the MyCroft Mark II, which is a much better looking device, I have to say, than the Mark I.
What? You don't
Yeah,
like the
much
weird cartoony face display?
I mean, I could get behind silliness and stuff, but I think this one looks more like something anybody would put out in their home. Like my home, you expect silly, smiling digital faces, but this one looks very solid.
I think it actually, I was just giving it like a little bit of a hard time. The MyCroft first one wasn't that big a deal, but in terms of like the design is not bad or anything. It's just kind of fun in a silly way. But the new one does seem a lot more, just more professional looking, I think. And I haven't used MyCroft in a long time. When I did use MyCroft, it could do a lot of cool stuff, but it also kind of felt like it was like too early stages. But that's been years ago. Mm-hmm. And this is a whole new model that is coming out in like a month or a little bit over a month. So I'm very excited to see what they have with this new latest thing. I mean, I think the idea of creating it with your own Raspberry Pi and that sort of stuff like that is a really cool idea. To have something like MyCroft where you can have your own virtual home assistant that's actually integrated into your workflow and to being able to customize it because it's open source and be able to integrate it with so much cool stuff, I think that's fantastic. So I think there's a lot of potential for the MyCroft, and I hope that the work done for MyCroft continues to grow, because I want to have a virtual assistant set up in my home, but I also don't want it to be one of the main companies.
You don't want the privacy invasive, and they talk about that here. Provides a great voice for those who are interested in the privacy, and it only will collect information if you ask it to. So there's opt-in and opt-out if you want it to use some of that information to help improve its abilities. I took and built one of these out of a Raspberry Pi. At the time, they wanted you to use the PlayStation camera as a connection into the Raspberry Pi, which acted as your mic and things. So I built it per their specs, brought it to a local Linux group that I was running here in Georgia, and we were playing with some of its abilities. Like you, Michael, it was like hit or miss. Sometimes it would understand what you're saying. Sometimes it would do something different. It wasn't perfect, but I feel like supporting this, $299 is a lot, and if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. Maybe look at the Raspberry Pi option. But if you can, I look at this as something we want to grow, and that $299, while a little pricey for home assistants, when you can go get an Echo for $50 or something, you got to think about the reason why they can sell that for $50 is because they're going to sell your data on top of it. And you want to grow this ecosystem. We really need a really good open source alternative to those things out there. And I think MyCroft is the closest thing. I haven't tried it recently, but I'm sure it still needs some work. But the more people utilizing it, training it, and running through those algorithms, the better it's going to get. And let's not pretend that Siri and Google Voice and stuff are actually good either.
Yeah,
so
they have problems.
We don't have a lot to catch up to, honestly, with when it comes to the mainstream there.
Yeah, I really want to try this new MyCroft out. I still have the first one, and I really liked it, but it was just sluggish. The software was sluggish whenever you do commands. It was that was my experience with it, but it's brilliant, and I was hoping it would get updated, and it has. So I have a feeling the software is just getting better and better as well with the hardware.
Yeah, it's got a lot of new features like active noise cancellation, full color touchscreen, all kinds of different things that you can play with that. So definitely check that one out. But if we're talking about gadgets, we got to talk about servers next. Servers,
naturally,
Linux,
I guess.
they kind of like they're married together. They're one and
I mean,
same,
yes, that's
so-
true, but I'm not really sure you would count a server as a gadget necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
typically a server is a giant machine, or
No.
at least like a
That little box that Manjaro sent us runs all of my Pi-hole, my Nextcloud server, all of that.
Well,
So
you turned it
it's
into
a little
server,
gadget,
I guess.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well-
Fair enough.
You mean it's not a 250 node Beowulf cluster?
Whoa. We're not speaking different languages here, Jill. Speak English.
Speak English. So, what exactly you're talking about with this server gadget?
Well, I was looking at really unique servers out there because obviously we could go talk about Blade servers and those type of things. That's not gadgety enough. I feel like everybody knows.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I guess. But this is an onion.
I guess.
But I didn't say it. That's the difference. When I say it, it matters. It means something.
Oh, okay. I got it now. I got it.
So this is the world's smallest server. The world's smallest. So I have the little mini cube that Manjaro sent us. I love it. It's awesome. This is way, way smaller than that. This is like the size of a quarter. And yes, it can be used as a server. It's the world's smallest Linux server with Wi-Fi built in. And you can build it for all of the Internet of Things that you want to do out there. It is called the Omega 2, a simple, affordable development board for everyone, as they claim. And it is
When they say it's affordable,
so cute.
I mean, let's see,
Yes.
how affordable is it, Ryan? Yes,
How
it's
affordable?
cute. Yes, it's small and it looks interesting. And also they talked about how they have different ways you can like add stuff onto it to make it even, have more power and stuff like that. But let's be serious. What's the starting price of this server, Ryan?
Well, like most servers, your price range starts at about $50,000 for your initial implementation,
Naturally,
and then
right.
up to anywhere to $1 million to $4 million. But this particular server implementation is $5 whole.
$5.
$5.
That's so excessive.
Yes, $5 whole.
That's
And you
awesome.
could get the Omega 2 Plus for $9, or if you want the Omega and a dock to put it in, you're going to really have to open your pocketbook at a full 20 buckaroos there. 20 buckaroos.
Yeah.
So much money.
Oh. They call it the Onion Omega 2, but yet there's a cherry next to it. In the pit.
They need to hire you, Jill, for their marketing. You know what? Yeah.
Great point. I mean, why is it not an onion? Come on.
I mean, there are little baby onions too, and they could have put that next to the picture of it on the website. But instead, they put a cherry, which makes sense because it's just a little
so
bit
tiny.
bigger than that cherry.
So maybe they should
Yeah.
have called it the Omega 2 Cherry.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
because they wanted to say that Omega 2 is the cherry on top of your gadgets list.
See,
Ah,
that's pretty good
Very
there.
good.
Yeah.
But this little device, the size of a quarter, actually runs a full Linux distro out there. In fact, in the videos, they'll show it running Midnight Commander, Jill. And
Yeah.
things like that, doing a
was
bunch
excited.
of different... Yeah, and it's got Wi-Fi built in, which is quite amazing. I mean, the original Raspberry Pis, I don't think, had Wi-Fi built into them, and they're doing that now, something the size of a quarter. But you could do some Python in this, PHP, Node. You could do some cloud integrations, obviously IoT things with this little device. It's actually quite usable for those who like to hack around with little gadgets. And the price is right, and it would be a really fun thing for kids, too, to play with. And there's even stuff where they show it controlling robotic arms and things as applications for this little device. So
Very
go check it out. It's not one you hear a lot about, but I think it's pretty cool.
For $5.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
in my cart.
Exactly. The next server I want to talk about is a little bit bigger. It's called the Freedombox. And this is a privacy server for non-experts. It lets you install and configure server applications with just a few clicks, and you can run it on your own hardware. So completely open source. You want to run it yourself, you can, or you can purchase their very inexpensive Pioneer Edition box. And this is awesome because I like looking at the options of purchasing their equipment sometimes, even if I could run it on my own, because it kind of helps support the whole ecosystem of things like this. But what I like about this little box is that it comes pre-installed. It reminds me of CloudRun. Michael, we've used CloudRun before, where basically you can, on DigitalOcean, you can spin up a servers and it kind of does all the back end work and even upgrades and stuff for you. You just kind of click the button. It's like the marketplace for DigitalOcean too, where one-click droplets. But this comes pre-installed with a bunch of software and even has battery backup built into it.
Nice.
Which is kind of cool. And this little device will allow you to do web-based IMAP clients, email, calendar, online chatting, file storage, basically anything you could do with the little server there. And it's a whole 69 Monopoly money. It had that weird symbol, so I assume that's Monopoly money.
Euros. Yes.
Oh, euros.
Euros. So for those who are interested in checking this out, and you want to know what that amount of money is in real money, you can go to Google, and this is actually true. You can go to Google, search 69 euros, and put 69 euros in real money, and it will tell you what it is in USD.
Yeah,
that's like an Easter egg.
We have
thing.
way too many listeners in the UK to be pissing all of them off. So we're joking. To be clear,
we are joking, but that is also true that Google will do that if you do that. Yeah. I just thought it was funny just to mention that
real money.
Because you said Monopoly money. I'm like, well, we have to give them the Easter egg. But this is really cool. The Freedombox is a really interesting thing, and the idea of having like a home server that's kind of pre-set up and it has all these different features and being able to configure it with different applications and all that sort of stuff is really just an awesome idea. And also the name Freedombox, I like it because it's, you get to control it, right? Do whatever you want with it. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's been around since 2010. I remember when they launched the Freedombox, and that was more expensive then, but it's come down in price, and it's even better now. It's really cool.
So one of our listeners just said they don't use the euro in the UK. I forgot it's tea bags. So they use...
Oh, no.
They trade tea. Because remember the whole thing where we dumped their tea in the ocean when we were mad at them? It's the tea.
Yes,
Zeb
I remember.
might
I
not
was
be
there.
too happy about that, Ryan. Zeb might not be too happy about that.
They don't use paper money. They use tea bag things. Yeah, different types of spices
going
and
off
tea.
The rails, it feels like.
Yes. Sorry, everyone in the UK. I did not mean to get your money wrong.
We did not want to insult the tea bags, of sure. Of course.
Oh, so Impatient Ape in chat said €1 is $1.03 in US monies.
Yeah.
I still think the real money is the better way of finding out.
Yes.
So this next gadget, Jill, I think you're just going to squeal over. It's called the Mini Pupper.
Yes.
And so robots are very cool just in general. Wendy's been talking about on Hardware Addicts some of the robotic projects she's working on with her kids. On the Hardware Addicts version, though, she tells us all the happy stuff about it. When she's not on Hardware Addicts, we find out she's up till 3 a.m. because the stupid robot's not doing what it's supposed to do sometimes. But it's still fun at the end of the day when you finally get it. And I know all that frustration because sometimes you're programming these things and they do the right thing one time and then something changes and they won't repeat it. But the Mini Pupper is an open source robot dog designed to make robotics easier for schools, homeschool families, enthusiasts, whoever wants to play with this little device. It's a dog-shaped robot that can hop, trot, and run around. Also, doesn't make messes in your house. So it's already far more advanced than a real dog.
It's far cuter than the common big robots that we see.
But this looks just like that dog from Boston Dynamics.
Boston Dynamics. That was
that was
the
messing
word I was
everything up.
Yeah, I don't know where you were going with that.
My brain's Boston Dynamics. Yeah, it looks like that dog.
It does a little bit, and
Google
also it looks like a really fun idea for getting people into robotics. To help build out this robot dog and just kind of play with it. I think that's a fantastic idea. And of course, as a dog person, I am glad that the robot dog was the first on the list. And also, we're going to skip the next one and go to the next topic because no one needs to get a robot cat. I think that's kind of ridiculous, right?
Whoa!
I'd like a robot kitty.
You're going to talk trash about a robot cat?
I would never talk trash.
You know how many cat people we have in our audience?
I'm just saying a robot puppy is much cuter than a robot cat.
Listen, it's one thing to make fun of people UK's money. It's another thing to make fun of cats. Okay,
Yeah.
the cats run the internet.
And so
Yes.
what you're hearing is that when you make fun of something, it's okay, but when I do it, it's bad. Okay?
Yeah, well, you went way too far. Like the whole internet was built for sharing cat pictures, and you want to go to attack that?
No,
you
it's
wanna
for
attack that
adorable
audience?
puppy pictures. That's what it's made for.
No,
That's
no,
what it's
no.
made for.
By the way, you skipped over the fact that the dog has a LiDAR detector in it and can do real-time environmental scanning and can move around objects and things like that,
That is
along
pretty
with
awesome.
running and trotting and stuff. So it's very, very cool. And you can do little animations with its face, so you can make it
Yeah,
even
it's
cuter
so
with
cute.
sleepy or happy or whatnot. But yes, there is a cat version of this, but it's not as advanced as the dog version. As Michael would say, dogs are superior to cats, so that's why, right?
I mean, I
You
wouldn't
just shrugged
say,
your shoulder there.
I wouldn't
so
say
arrogantly.
that. I wouldn't
Oh.
say that because I don't have to say it. It's objectionable fact. So there we go.
But this is called the
Aw.
Nybble, and
So
it's the world's cutest open source cat robot. So if you want a little cat, and they have a video of them playing together. Although you kind of have to use your imagination because the one cat they have on a box, the robot cat, and then the other robot cat's coming up to it, and it more kind of falls into the box than pounces. But my imagination is there.
Just imagine
And,
what this could do.
Yeah, I can imagine what it could do. But it
Well,
was
like,
cool.
Who wouldn't want to have a robot cat like set up so it could be on your desk in order to push things off? Like that just sounds.
Knock,
Yeah, that's
knock
what
your
cats
cups
do.
off your desk and stuff. Yeah. We also have some miscellaneous items and gadgets to talk about here because they're not necessarily things you can go get, but they were cool. They didn't really get the support they were needed, or
Yeah.
the company just changed directions. But Michael, actually, you brought this first one, which really caught my attention. I got all excited about it to find out you can't really get one anymore.
So the thing that Ryan is talking about is this Linux-powered motorcycle. And I just wanted to talk about it because I think this is an awesome idea. And also the fact that this looks like a fantastic, like it looks like a super bike. And it is an electric Linux-powered motorcycle called the Mavizen TTX02. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any like recent articles about it. The oldest one I could find, or the newest one I could find, was like 2012. So it's, significantly out of date in terms of like information about it. But it has a USB port, it had Wi-Fi built into it, and its own onboard like server system. So it's a really interesting thing, and I hope that still exists, because I
I want
kind
them
of
to
want
bring
one.
it back.
But
They want
yeah.
to bring it
It's
back.
cool.
Oh yeah, if it doesn't exist, bring it back because that would be fantastic.
I
This
see
is so cool.
the applications for utilizing Linux when you want to create something like having this real-time feedback system on an electric-powered vehicle where you have a lot of information you're wanting to transmit back and forth between the user, and also the fact that we see so many vehicles coming out today with things like Wi-Fi and stuff built into them. But of course, I would want it to be Linux, and so this is really cool. I think the timing of it was wrong. If you took something like this and released it today with as popular as Linux is, I think it would do much better.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh,
if the company gets a hold of this, somebody used to work for them, sends them this episode or whatnot, consider bringing it back and then coming on the show and talking about it because it's
Yes.
a pretty cool idea. I like
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? I saw it advertised on Tech TV back in the day.
Yeah.
And they got on it and drove it around the city. And that was where I was remembering, oh, yeah, open source motorcycle. Cool.
Yeah, it would be awesome. I think we need that back. The other thing that got discontinued that really never got to the point where people, I think, trusted enough to go buy it, and then they discontinued it. So maybe their trust was properly placed. And that was the JingPad A1. Like, this was a really exciting tablet device because the specs were comparative to the latest iPad and the latest Samsung tablets out there. But it was supposed to run, of course, a Linux operating system and supposed to have the ability to basically put whatever OS distro you want on it. There's some back and forth on whether the version that actually did launch and come out, you were actually able to do that with. But this was an 11-inch display that had a 2K, 266 PPI, 350 nit, had a very powerful ARM chip in it, 8,000 milliamp battery. It had all of these awesome features. It looked really nice and had a keyboard too that they were going to sell with this. But at this point, it's discontinued. again, I think there were a lot of issues with their advertising and marketing, which seems to be quite common with open source projects and things, that they do a really good job of making a really cool device and a terrible job of actually telling anybody about it and marketing it and following up on that stuff. So the JingPad, I feel like, had an opportunity to really be something big, but people were probably on the fence already because nobody had heard of JingPad, and then they really didn't finish the project out, as I understand fully.
Yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what happened, and we don't really know in terms of like, there's not an official statement that it's been discontinued, but there hasn't been any movement from the company for at least 6 months.
And you can't buy it on the site. The link's down when you go to buy it.
When you go to buy it, it just says the store doesn't exist. And you try to download the ISO to put it on another device, it also doesn't let you download it. The file doesn't exist. So we're making the assumption that it's discontinued based on those factors. And I think that that's a fair assumption. But I think there was a lot of potential to JingPad. We talked about it on a previous episode, and it did look very interesting. And the specs that it said were really good, and the video demos they showed were really good. So I don't know exactly what happened with it, but I think that it had a lot of potential, and it's kind of a shame that it's not around anymore. But at the same time, I think that there are still a lot of great gadgets that we've shown you today that you should definitely check out. We'll have links in the show notes. And because, holidays are right around the corner, right, Ryan?
I mean, I'm wearing my Christmas shirt already because holidays are right around the corner, Michael. Good point.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
Ryan's wearing a Pickle Rick, Merry Rickmas shirt.
Yeah. So think about getting these gifts for the loved ones in your life now that the holidays are here. Or
they're not here. They're right around the corner.
They're right around the corner.
It's very different.
But
I
have
to put in like a little clip from the previous episode where you said that, just because I just want people to get the reference of why we're talking about this.
The holidays are coming. What is more relaxing?
I mean, they're coming, but they're pretty far.
They're coming. You got to start preparing for these things.
It's Christmas in July, don't you know?
Oh my goodness! Like they're coming. They're right around the corner. I mean, many corners, but they're right around.
It is. I mean, we're starting to enter, getting close to holiday season. I feel like in a few months or so. Anyways, I mean, I can make fun of myself too. Merry Rickmas.
That's a sign of a good character, I think, Ryan. So there you go.
Thanks, Michael. That was a really sweet compliment. That was really sweet. You know what else is right around the corner?
What?
Uh-oh.
An ad read. This episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by Bitwarden. Get started right now with your free account at bitwarden.com/tux. A password manager software allows you to have peace of mind knowing that your online accounts are secure. Bitwarden provides you the tools to store all your passwords in a secure vault, auto-generate those passwords and usernames. You can even automatically fill them in if you want on the login forms. And you can access it across all of your devices. The first thing I need to get up and running on a brand new install is always Bitwarden. And I mean that. Like literally, it's one of the first things I need to get started because it's my access and gateway into everything else. And I trust Bitwarden because it seals and encrypts your data with end-to-end encryption before it leaves your device. So you know you're the only person with access to the data. So go to bitwarden.com/tux to get started. And I mentioned it's completely free. You can get started for free. You don't have to pay a penny. You don't have to put a credit card in or anything up front. You can just go sign up and get started for free. But you're going to love this service so much and appreciate all the amazing work, including sponsoring our network that they do, and go for their $10 premium account. Let's say get you a gigabyte of encrypted file storage, 2-step login with YubiKey U2F Duo, which I use my YubiKey as one of my authentication methods to get into Bitwarden. I love it. Works perfect. Vault Health Reports, Bitwarden Authenticator, TOTP, and Priority Customer Support for $10 a year. Everything's gone up in price.
Year.
Not Bitwarden. They're keeping it at $10 per year. This is an amazing project filled with amazing people. We love them. Let them know we sent you by going to bitwarden.com/TUX. That's bitwarden.com/TUX to get started. Thanks again to Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of Destination Linux.
In the news this week, we're going to talk about something that is happening in a discussion-wise for Debian. And it's really interesting because Debian does not come with any non-free firmware. And what I mean by non-free is that term is not great, but it means proprietary. That's what that actually means. And many people love Debian because of this. However, there is kind of a problem when it comes to non-free firmware / proprietary firmware not being included, because it means that some hardware is not going to be supported by Debian, which can create some issues between, maybe like a Wi-Fi card, or, even like the latest GPUs and not having access to support it with like NVIDIA GPUs and stuff like that. So with this kind of approach, it has created issues that are being discussed at the latest DebConf that Debian did. Now, this is also interesting because there is an unofficial non-free version of Debian that includes these non-free stuff that you can download the ISO and get access to this stuff. But most users would have basically no idea this even exists because you're not going to be able to find it on the Debian website.
I actually had no idea. 5 years in Linux, using Debian multiple times, and even variations of Debian like MX Linux, which I absolutely adore. I never knew there was an option that included non-free for Debian out there, because there's no way to find it on their official webpage that I could see, even after you told me this thing exists, Michael, and there's no advertising it at all. So somebody's spending a lot of time building this thing, again, marketing, that's out there for people who want to use it. Maybe you have an NVIDIA GPU, maybe you have that Wi-Fi card you can't get Debian up and running on with your machine, and nobody knows that that work is being done and or taking advantage of it, unless maybe you've been in Linux for like 15 plus years or something. I don't know, because I don't know how this would have ever come across my desk that this thing exists unless this story broke here.
It definitely would.
Because it never did in 5 years up until this point. I never knew.
Wow.
Nobody's ever mentioned it.
It's not a very common thing to see. And also in the chat, Luna says that it's buried on a wiki page. That's where you'd probably find it.
Yeah.
It's like that's the kind of issue that a lot of projects have, where there's something that might be interesting for people to find, but it's so hard to find it that you're not even going to use it. Like, for example, I knew that this existed, but I didn't know where to get it. So, it was just like an issue of because at one point, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a way to get it in a certain way, and then they changed the website and it was no longer there anymore. So I just kind of stopped bothering to look for it. And those kind of situations, that's just, there's a little bit of confusion when it comes to these sort of things that we've kind of it's not just directly a Debian thing. There's also a lot of projects that aren't making it clear of how to get certain stuff that they want people to use. And I think this is partly we wanted to talk about it because we wanted to let everybody know that if you have something that you would want people to know about, you got to put a little bit of effort and a little extra effort in letting them know that they can.
Yeah.
But Jill, you've been using this, of course, right?
Yeah. Since, Debian included a non-free ISO many years ago. Actually.
Oh, you silver surfers say you know about everything.
Yeah. Well, initially, that was so I could get the Broadcom Wi-Fi drivers to work under Debian. And that's why I searched it out. I searched for an option out and found it. So ever since then, I just installed that one.
Yeah. See, if I wanted to use MX or Debian on the latest hardware, I would use MX because they actually have an advanced hardware release that Dolphin advertises actually and is on their webpage that you can download if you have more advanced software. So I've always gone the MX route because I like the way MX sets everything up by default. Yeah. But I think it's kind of an interesting problem. So this thing exists. What else happened at this conference?
So the Debian developer Steve McIntyre did a talk about the firmware mess, and they talk about doing fixing the firmware mess. And it's really interesting because the problem is not having the proprietary firmware or the non-free firmware creates these limitations in terms of compatibility with various hardware. So they're trying to come up with an idea of what could be the solution to fixing this issue. And they gave a couple of options that were proposed to the crowd in an open conversation style. And one of these options was keep the current situation and no change. Not the best way to solve the problem. But stop providing non-free, unofficial images in general. There's other options, which was advertise the images with non-free firmware as official alongside the classic pure Debian, and also include non-free firmware in an official Debian images, kind of like just including it by default in similar ways that Fedora does, or perhaps something else that nobody came up with yet. Now, when they asked the room, the majority of them voted for option 4, which was to include the non-free firmware in the Debian images, similar to other distributions, which, in my opinion, I think that is the best option. But I'm curious what Jill and Ryan, what you think about this.
I'm going for option 3 or 4. And option 3 is advertise the images with non-free firmware as official alongside the classic pure Debian image.
Yeah, I like 3 and 4 as well. I don't like the term non-free. I think that's really going to confuse people. If I went on to Debian's website to download an image and it said, and I wasn't like, to us, we get it. But to somebody who's trying Linux for the first time and they see non-free, well, I don't want to pay for something, so I'll go with the other one. Like it's such a stupid terminology that's used for this. But either way, the point is, which one? Well, 3 and 4 works. I think with 4, you should give people the option. Ultimately, Debian, like Fedora, is also known for being, very much focused on that open source philosophy 100%. We don't want to put proprietary stuff on. However, there are cases when you need to get your Wi-Fi to work, for instance, or video card for a specific hardware that you need that. So giving the people option in the install, making it very clear that maybe it's something they have to uncheck. So if they don't know, they just kind of leave it checked by default if you don't want that stuff. But I think I've never understood in the Linux ecosystem why Debian wasn't more popular. I never understood why Ubuntu's and Pop! OS and Mint and everyone else can make a far more popular from a user standpoint. I'm not talking about servers, although I think it's the case with servers too. Ubuntu's still more popular, but either way, why they couldn't make why everyone else can make a really popular desktop for users off of Debian, but Debian can't. Like Debian is not the first one that we recommend to new users. It's not really recommended that often, honestly, ever at all. I don't think anyone, even when I was starting in Linux, ever said, go try Debian. They may have said, go try MX or all these others. And I think it's because decisions like this have honestly held them back. And if it's so old and it's so outdated, some people like that. Some people need that for their older machines. But I think the vast majority of people coming into Linux these days have something that was built post 2004. So you probably need to start looking at how you add hardware. And I'm really happy to see that the developers, frankly, agreed with me there. I think now the question is, how do you do it appropriately?
I agree with both of you that 3 or 4 is the best option. I think 4 is the best option, and I'm okay with the whole, the idea you had about unchecking it if you don't want it. So if you know that you want to have the only open source or that sort of stuff, then you can uncheck it. But otherwise, just, include those things. I think that's the best option overall, because if you just forced it, I think people would have a problem with that. And if you did the whole 2 different images thing, I think that would be even more confusing, because now they don't know which one to get. And when you see that, when you were talking about the non-free term, I agree completely. I hate that term. I actually kind of hate the term free software, and I'll explain why, so people don't just immediately start, typing in the comments about how I'm awful and I don't like free software or whatever. I don't like the term free software. The philosophy about it is fantastic. I love the philosophy of it. The term is terrible because 99% of the population of the planet refer to that phrase as being gratis, as in it's free as in cost, not as in freedom. So it's just a bad term because you're trying to convince the world that what these terms mean in a different way than everybody already understands it. And I think that's not a good approach. And I would even say that open source is not the best alternative either, because it can be sort of manipulated into understanding what it means, because that's already been seen.
So what is the answer, Michael? What is the answer?
Well, the answer is Libre software.
Yeah, we talked about this on an episode not too long ago about to use the term FLOSS, free Libre open source.
I would
software.
also skip that too. Just Libre software. Because
just Libre software.
Well, the free implies that it has to be free, and Libre software doesn't imply that it has to be free in terms of cost.
Yeah.
So people automatically assume when you have free and Libre that there's some kind of difference between the two, even though they mean the same thing in the terms of that actual term.
Yeah, I get you.
Listen, we all love zebras, Michael, but I don't know why we would name our software Zebra. Doesn't make sense.
Libre,
Libre.
not zebra. So there's also some people say Libre, because that is another way of saying that
Nacho
word.
Libre. That was a great movie.
Sure. Okay. Not I mean, we could debate that if you want to. But Libre is the Spanish style of saying that word. The Libra is the English way of saying that word. Because what's important is that word is in like 50 different languages, and it all means the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's why it's more important to use that term than the free software, because free software is very confusing because it can mean different things to different people and different languages. Whereas in Libra, it's very common in various different languages to mean one specific thing, which is liberty. So that's why I want people to start calling it. You could call it non-Libra. That's fine too, even though I don't like that either. But at the same time, that's better than non-free because people
I
are
love
not
nachos. I love software. Nacho Libre.
Nacho Libre software. That's what we're making.
Yes.
That's what we're arguing.
As was recommended
Libre
in our chat. Yes. But I think it's a good point. I think it can be confusing. I think we're so far down that road, switching it would be very, very difficult and long road, but you got to start at some point. But I think it does cause a lot of confusion. Like, non-free does not make any sense to anybody outside of people who are deeply rooted in open source community. Outside of that, it makes zero sense. I remember bringing this up to Manjaro years ago and telling them that it made no sense in their ISO installer to say, do you want free or non-free version? Like, nobody knows what that means. And they actually put it so now it says, a little quote box is telling you that this is for the NVIDIA driver. So at least it explains it in the installer because it's just people. Yes, if you're in Linux, you get it. But outside of that, nobody knows what the heck you're talking about,
Yeah, and that's the important piece. It's just they don't know, and the problem with free software is that they make an assumption. Not that they don't know. It's okay not to be aware of something. It's bad when you make an assumption. But the problem is that everyone is going to make that assumption first. I did. When I first heard of the term free software, I assumed it meant freeware. And this was like in the 90s, but I still assumed it. And then I later found out it meant, it's about freedom. Well, that's a terrible name to choose. But so Libre software, the reason why this is powerful and why it's important and we should all change, we're going to just put it out there, draw the line and say, you should do it, is because Libre software, there isn't an assumption made. If people understand what the word Libre means, then great, they understand it. If they don't, then they make no assumption because they have no reference point of what that could mean. So they have to look it up. And then when they look it up and see, liberty, then it's very clear it's talking about.
They look it up and they see the Jack Black movie with him in a wrestler
That might happen. I haven't tried it myself. I don't know if you search for Libre software, I don't think that Nacho Libre is going to pop up. But if you search for Libre, maybe Nacho Libre will pop up. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to do a test for science. But I think the Debian team is making the right decision. I think they're doing the right thing here. I think the developers are on the right path because Debian's very popular. I think it could be extraordinarily more powerful and more popular if they were to make changes like this. So I'm all on board. So good job, Debian.
Yeah, absolutely. If I completely agree. If they do this change of doing the number 4 where they include it, especially with your checkbox idea, then there's going to be a lot more people interested in trying out Debian and staying on Debian because they're not going to run into an issue where their Wi-Fi card doesn't work or something like that.
Yeah.
When I do Libre, by the way, the first I go to images.
Is it
Nacho Libre and him?
Oh.
I'm glad you checked it for us. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, did you finally get your pre-order for the Steam Deck and are looking for a good indie action exploration shooter to sink your teeth into? Then check out Axiom Verge 2. This game lets you explore a sprawling alien world in the sequel to the award-winning Axiom Verge. And I love that game. I spent a lot of hours in the original game.
Would you compare that to like Metroid, Jill? Would you say Axiom Verge is like Metroid? Because that's what it reminded me of when I played the original.
Yeah, in fact, it's like a 2D retro style Metroidvania kind of game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love Metroid style games. And this Axiom Verge 2 honestly has a little bit of everything for everyone. It has an awesome MIDI soundtrack and beautiful pixel art. Listening to this awesome music and watching this beautiful pixel art while exploring an alternative Earth-like world, complete with the ruins of an ancient high-tech civilization. Woohoo! Another topic that we all love here on Destination.
They must have used Linux in that high-tech civilization.
Yeah.
This might be the
no,
first...
they did not. They did not use Linux in that high-tech civilization.
Why?
Because this is the ruins of the high-tech civilization.
Oh, yeah.
So if they were to use Linux, it wouldn't have been ruined.
They were using
But that's
Windows,
okay.
and they
Now
got
we
the
gotta
blue screen
build-
to death.
Exactly.
Now we gotta build a new universe with good infrastructure that is Linux based and not Windows based.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's
I
more
like
like it.
So in this game, you can hack machines and battle monsters. And by the way, the monsters are absolutely freaking beautiful in this game. You can use your remote drone to enter the breach, a parallel but connected reality that is filled with its own dangers and obstacles. So many games rolled up into one. It's a survival game,
Right.
It's a platformer game, it's a Metroidvania game, it's a little bit of everything, and that makes it so fun and exciting to play.
And it's only $17 on Steam right now, so you can pick it up
Yeah.
on sale if you pick it up right now. If you're
Yes.
not listening to us live, that sale may be already gone. We don't know. That's why you need to listen to us live, because we're on YouTube every Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern. 1:15 p.m. Eastern. 1:05.
Yeah.
It depends on the week.
1:18-ish.
Sometimes it's 105, 107. It depends, because sometimes Ryan's not ready before we start the stream. And it's just, I just have to deal with him, in his setup process. I mean, he's got to find the right Rickmas shirt, all that
I've
sort
got
of stuff.
makeup artists. I've got hair
Exactly.
hat artist. They make sure
Yeah,
my
hat
hat's
artist,
perfect.
Yeah.
Just
I've got
that's a fantastic idea. Like a job is just pick a hat. That's all they have to do.
yeah, and they make sure it's straight. Perfect on there. Representing the red hat today. Speaking of representing red hat today, our software spotlight is Penpot. So when I was at Nest with Fedora conference, they had this great talk about redesigning Fedora docs and contributing to Fedora docs. And in that talk, there was discussion about using Penpot, which I was not familiar with until then, which is an open source prototyping and design platform made for teams, made for collaboration with teams there. And I was really impressed with it. Wanted to make sure I brought it to our audience here. Whether you're doing web-based design, prototyping applications for organizations, all of those things, it uses open web standards like SVG formats, and those you can install it on remote servers or use Docker Compose to get it up and running. So it's this very powerful tool with lots of ways to get it embedded or integrated into your organization, and allows collaboration from masses, but in an organized fashion utilizing this tool. Jill, you went and checked Penpot out. What were your thoughts on this?
Oh gosh, I downloaded and installed the design system template, and honestly, I was very impressed with how easy it was to not just get started, but to create simple vector graphics for web pages or a poster. This is great. I can recommend this to my students, and I was so happy you put this in the show notes because I never knew about it. And
Yes,
I was
that's
very
always a
impressed.
win.
Yeah,
When one of you guys don't know about one of the software.
Actually, you
bits
got
that
2
I
wins. I didn't know about this either.
Yeah, cool.
So there you go.
Cool. And for a beta, oh my gosh, this is so polished.
Wait, this is a
And-
beta?
Yeah, this is a beta.
Oh, wow.
When I was reading through the documentation, I was really impressed. And honestly, this is the open source UX solution we have needed for a long time. And
Yeah.
it's collaborative and web-based.
That is very cool.
There are some other ones that are just single user based, but this one is awesome.
Yeah, the collaboration aspect is really, really awesome. I think that's one of the big things about the design world is in the prototyping design world. There is more push going towards the collaboration aspects. That there are services that are doing this, and to see that there is one that you can do with an open source and you can self-host it, that's mind-blowing to me.
Amazing.
Also in the design world, that's something that I have wanted for a long time. So to see this as an option, thanks for pointing it out, Ryan, because not only is it new, it also looks fantastic. So I am excited to try it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Another thing that you might be excited to try is the tip of the week this week. So we're going to be talking about how to expand a command's results. So we talked about the power of using piping with commands like the pipe symbol. and you can do like all sorts of different benefits with the pipe symbol, but there's one that you can do that allows you to more easily see a lot of results at once. So this week we're going to expand on all of that by giving you one command that will keep you can keep handy to use with the pipe command specifically, and that is the more command. So many times in the terminal, you will get a long string of text, or even so much that you can't actually see it all in the terminal. Even when you scroll up, it's just not going to be there because there's so much of it. So this can make it hard to find and the relevant information that you want to find. So this is where the more comes in. So when you do a command and you do pipe more at the end of it, it will create multiple pages. So you can scroll through those pages to see all of the results that are coming through this, whatever commands you're running. So as an example, if you type wget space -- help, then pipe more, it will be able to take all of the commands for the information about how you use what wget, and then put it in a multi-page layout so you can switch back and forth depending on what things you need to see. And in last week's episode, we talked about how to add timestamps to your bash history. And if you've been using your computer for a very long time, for example, I've had the same install for multiple years, that means I have a lot of stuff in my bash history. If you haven't customized your bash history, you have a maximum of like 1,000 entries, and that is a perfect example of when you use the more command. Or if you're like me and you customize and have more than 1,000, it's even more important. So having this as an option, I think it'd be really important for people who want to, use the terminal to get that sort of information, but you're having an issue of like how much it's displaying. So if you want more information, you'll find links in the show notes.
More
and
information.
Details.
Get it? If you want more information,
Yes.
that's
I
so
did
good.
not do that on purpose. Although I love that I accidentally did a dad joke this episode.
Yeah, pipe more. You want pipe more information?
Oh,
check
even
the
better.
show notes.
Yes,
Yeah.
you check the show notes. Yep.
So we have to give a special happy birthday out there to the GNOME team out there. GNOME, whatever you want to pronounce it. Doesn't matter because it's their birthday.
GNOME. Just say GNOME.
GNOME. There you go.
That way you get both of them and everybody's happy. Or everybody's mad. Either way, it's...
Everybody's mad. Yeah, so they have a birthday celebration. I'm sure they may be having some type of event or something going on tomorrow.
I don't know of any event specifically. But
I couldn't find any. I was searching, but I feel like they should have a little bit of a birthday event or get together or something.
25 years is a massive milestone, so that's awesome.
Yeah, you at least need cake for a birthday.
Yeah.
You have to have cake.
Well, I mean,
you
want cake or cupcakes? We talked about this previous.
I mean, cupcakes are superior to muffins as long as everyone agrees there and there's no muffin. Nobody has muffins for their birthday. You know what I mean?
It's more important we talk about whether or not cake is superior or inferior to cupcakes.
It's the same thing. It's
no,
just
it's not.
mini cake.
No, it's not.
It's different
it's not
form factor.
That's it.
Form factor
That's a different
changes
mouthfeel for sure.
No, imagine it's basically like this. The cupcake is like the small gadget to a cake. Like we talked about.
I think a cupcake is superior because it's less messy and you don't have to have a plate and fork.
Exactly.
And
It's
you don't
right
consume
there.
as
Also-
much calories.
That's true too. Yeah. And there's also an extra benefit a lot of people don't think about is that a cupcake also avoids the birthday blow across their spit across the cake when people blow out candles.
Yeah.
Think about it.
This is true.
It happens.
Good point.
Not great. That's why I never eat cake unless it's a cupcake.
They could put that on a shirt. Your face, I never eat cake unless it's a cupcake.
Exactly. That's a new merch item in the store.
It's actually popular now to have a cake just made of cupcakes. And people blow out the candles on the top.
Yeah, we do that for my kids' birthdays because you don't want a bunch of kids shoving their greasy little dirty hands into your cake or blowing their spit across it.
Exactly.
You have cupcakes. Cupcakes are superior. All right. GNOME, let us know whether you guys chose cupcakes or cake for your birthday celebration. But happy birthday. Nobody chose Jill. Nobody chooses muffins. Okay.
Oh, no.
Nobody on a birthday picks a muffin.
They might choose a donut. I love donuts.
If you don't like the person, maybe you'd bring them a muffin on their birthday.
Whoa. Okay, if we're going to have this conversation again, Ryan, muffins are fantastic. How dare you?
So we better end this show before it goes completely off the rails. So a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. Unless you're a fan of muffins, then I'm not sure.
No,
we're on the fence.
We love you even more because muffins are fantastic. That's what Ryan's trying to say.
We're here every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern live at tuxdigital.com/live. Did you know this is a video podcast? You can actually on Sunday come and see our faces every Sunday live. The best part is
that's a massive perk. You don't want to miss it. You could see what we look like. And
we
know there are a lot of people who listen to the podcast only version and have no idea what we look like. It is possible to find out.
You can.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can join us in our YouTube chat or audio video on our big
digital fortress that we have. Yes.
Digital fortress.
Skybox.
Skybox. Yeah.
We call it a virtual stadium, not a digital fortress, right?
Yeah.
I'm ready for war, against the muffin eaters.
Against the muffins. No. See, it's I'm on both sides. I like cupcakes and muffins. That's it's not an either or. You can. Why can't we have both, Ryan? Why can't we have both?
Pick a side. You're either a friend or an enemy.
Or a frenemy. That's why I have both. You can also, like we talked about the Digital Fortress, you can join our patrons in that Digital Fortress and hang out with us every episode in the patron-only post show, which happens, like I said, every week. You can go to tuxdigital.com/contribute, become a patron, and join us in that 60,000 square foot Digital Fortress. And also, you can check out the unedited versions of the show, because maybe you weren't able to make it live to see our faces, but you still want to see our faces. You can do that immediately with the unedited version, because those are provided for patrons right after we record the show. But if you want to see our video version later, there is the edited one. You can still see our faces. You don't have to show up live if you don't want to, but it's definitely worth it if you want. So go to tuxdigital.com/contribute to become a patron, to join us in that 60,000 square foot Digital Fortress to battle off the ridiculous notion that we can't have.
Battle off pen chewers and muffin eaters.
No.
Those are the people we're going to war against.
No, the muffin eaters are fine, because you can have muffins and cupcakes. You can even combine the two and have this just monstrosity, or in some people's opinion, but also this glorious confection
they are not
in other
the same.
people's opinion.
They are not the same. People like muffins are not the same. But not on my level.
I'm on your side with the pen chewers, but I mean,
muffin people are down here.
Chewers.
That's the way it works.
Okay, so this has been an interesting episode for those who have never seen the show before, and I just wanted to point out that one of the comments in the chat, it says, I mentioned earlier that this show was going off the rails, and one of the comments said this show started off the rails. So
they usually do.
Yeah, they usually do. But something that is never off the rails, because it always has fantastic merchandise and swag, is the TuxDigital Store. I don't know where I was going with that. tuxdigital.com/store. You can get all sorts of great stuff. You can get mugs, hoodies, t-shirts, like hats, coasters, apparently random toys from Ryan's desk. I don't know.
Maybe merch from Scale.
You can get all sorts of stuff except for the stuff that Ryan was showing. tuxdigital.com/store.
And make sure to check out all our wonderful, amazing shows here on Tux Digital. We have the Pseudo Show, This Week in Linux, the DOS Geek channel, Linux Out Loud, Hardware Addicts, GameSphere, and our virtual Linux user group, Linux Saloon. And everyone head to tuxdigital.com and subscribe to all these great shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching in the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce. So everybody have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination Linux extreme!
Extreme!
Thanks for coming, everybody, and we'll see you next week.